At my request, let us entreat your company today. You're watching One Take Shakespeare. I'm your host, Penny, and I'm going to break it down for you in one continuous take. Well, viewers, sorry about the delay there, but guess what? It's our 10th episode. I think. I still haven't really sorted out that whole Othello thing, but it's the 10th episode as far as I'm concerned, so today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go back in time even further, and take a look at one of Shakespeare's probable influences, Thomas Kyd's The Spanish Tragedy, or Hieronymo is Mad Again, which is the best subtitle ever. Okay, so The Spanish Tragedy was written sometime between 1582 and 1592, depending on who you ask. According to Ben Jonson, for example, in the prologue to one of his plays, it was written sometime around 1584 to like 1589, but some scholars think that since the play makes no reference to the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, which was a big deal, that it must have been written before then, say like 1587. But the point is, Spanish tragedy was definitely on the scene by the time Shakespeare started writing in the early 1590s. Now, the publication and performance history is even more complicated, but let's just say it was popular. Spanish tragedy was performed by 3 different companies over a period of 10 years, including on tour in Germany. It was also published 11 times in 4 different quartos, not including an earlier edition which is now completely lost. So, while Spanish tragedy is pretty obscure today, back then it was a big deal. And if you look at the play, it's really not hard to see why. This play is awesome! It has war and deception and secret affairs and madness and murder and... Okay, well, let me just tell you the plot. Okay, so we start off with a ghost and the spirit of revenge, so we already know this play is going to be fun times. The ghost is, or was, Don Andrea, a Spanish nobleman, and he's pissed off because the Portuguese prince, Balthazar, killed him in this war that Spain and Portugal have been having. So he is here with revenge to get, well, revenge on Balthazar and anybody else who happens to be standing around. They're going to act as sort of a chorus for the rest of the play. So we find out that the war is over, Spain won, and Balthazar has been taken prisoner. Now, it was actually the Knight Marshal's son, Horatio, who captured him, but the Duke of Castile's son, Lorenzo, who's basically the heir to the throne, butts in and says that he helped. Which he didn't. But the king splits up the reward anyway, and Balthazar goes to stay with Lorenzo on really nice house arrest, where, as you do, he falls in love with the duke's daughter, Belle Imperia. Now, this is a problem, because Belle Imperia was secretly married to Andrea, and, Balthazar is the guy who killed him, so she wants nothing to do with him. Also, in the meantime, she's kind of fallen in love with Horatio, which really doesn't help. So Lorenzo and Balthazar hatch a plan. They get together a couple of henchmen, crash the happy couple's secret midnight garden date, grab Horatio, and hang and stab him in front of her. Yeah, nice guys, Lorenzo and Balthazar. Anyway, so after they vacate the scene of the crime, the Knight Marshal, Hieronymo, from the subtitle, comes out, discovers his only son's dead body doing a particularly macabre impression of a hanging plant, and he goes a smidge insane. Unfortunately, he doesn't know who to get revenge on, but Belle Imperia, who Lorenzo is keeping prisoner now because she's a witness, writes a letter in her own blood, because I guess she didn't have any ink, to tell Hieronymo who done it. Meanwhile, the king and the duke, who are apparently completely oblivious to all of this, decide that in order to make lasting peace between Spain and Portugal, Balthazar and Belle Imperia ought to get married. Awkward. Oh, meanwhile, there's a subplot in which the Viceroy of Portugal thinks that Balthazar is dead, and this one nobleman accuses this other nobleman of having murdered him, and he almost gets burnt at the stake for treason, but then they find out that Balthazar's actually in Spain, so everything's fine. Also, Lorenzo gets the one henchman to shoot the other henchman, and then that henchman gets hanged for murder, but, that's all incidental. Anyway, Hieronymo and Belle Imperia, they team up and get Lorenzo and Balthazar to help them stage a play within a play for the wedding natch, during which they kill them, and then Belle Imperia kills herself, and no one does anything to stop this because, you know, they think it's part of the play. But then Hieronymo brings out Horatio's dead body, which he's apparently been keeping this entire time, ew, and explains that, no, they're actually dead, how do you like it now, biznatches. So the king and the duke and the viceroy, who's there to see the wedding, run down from the gallery with some guards to try to grab him, but Hieronymo bites his tongue out so they can't make him talk. Then when they give him a pen so he can write, he stabs the duke and then he kills himself, and we end with 6 bodies on the stage, 3 more bodies off stage, and Revenge and Andrea happily distributing everybody in the afterlife. The end. So, have I mentioned that this play is awesome? Because this play is awesome! It's actually, it's kind of difficult for me to analyze it because I just want to squee about how awesome it is, but okay, I'm gonna try. Alright, so the Spanish tragedy, in addition to being really, really popular, was also really influential. It was directly referenced and sometimes parodied by a whole bunch of other Elizabethan playwrights, including sort of the big 3, Shakespeare, Marlowe, and Jonson. It also basically kicked off an entire genre called the revenge tragedy. This, as a model, tends to include secret murders, people going insane, revenge, plotting, and a whole bunch of corpses on stage at the end. So you basically can't go wrong with that. Hamlet, for example, is a revenge tragedy. Actually, some people like to list the Spanish tragedy as a direct source for Hamlet. They do have a lot in common. You have a revengeful ghost, the main character going insane, a play within a play, an incompetent advisor, and even a character named Horatio, but I don't know. I mean, they do have these elements in common, but they're in a different order and they serve completely different purposes in the story. It's kind of like comparing Lord of the Rings as a source for Dune. Which is not to say that I don't think Spanish tragedy influenced Shakespeare at all, because it totally did. If, for one thing, Shakespeare was a smart guy and he knew what to steal from. But also, Spanish tragedy is full of the type of genre blending that Shakespeare did so much of in his plays. Seriously, a good third of this play is hilarious until it mood whiplashes into something horrible and tragic. Anyway, you can also see a couple character types making the jump. Like, I see a whole lot of Shakespeare's awesome heroines in Belle Imperia. Seriously, how badass do you have to be to write a letter in your own blood? Belle Imperia actually has a fair amount of agency in her own revenge, which rocks pretty hard. And then there's the play within a play convention, which turns up in early modern theater all the time. In the Spanish tragedy and in Hamlet, the play within a play asks questions about the similarities between theater and real life, and asks, how different are they, really? In modern plays, like Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which is based on Hamlet, the play within a play brings up the similarities and the boundaries between theatrical death and actual death, which is fascinating in a really brain-bending kind of way. But it all goes back to Spanish tragedy. So yeah, that's the Spanish tragedy. Totally influential and totally awesome. You've been watching... Come on. Guess who? One Take Shakespeare Complaints Department. Hello, pretentious scholar guy. Aw, you missed me. Dude, seriously, it's about time. Really? I've only been gone for a couple... How long have I been gone? Oh, my classes!